welcome to the final installment of the podcast series Gen Z Climate Beings. If you've listened through all the conversations, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we hope that it has helped you in your own climate journey, that you've learned something new, that you've thought about climate through a different perspective or lens, and that you've seen the myriad ways that young people are interacting with, thinking about, and responding to our internal and external climate worlds. I'm really excited for this last conversations. It's a bit different than the previous episodes. In this last conversation, I am joined by almost all of my participants, and we are in conversation together, practicing radical imagination and collaborative future world building, talking about what the climate present and future we want looks and feels like. And for me, this project and episode was inspired by an article from Yes Magazine, Solutions Journalism magazine, that I read back in 2021 called Building a Beautiful Climate Future Starts with Imagination. And I think that for me, I've realized one of the most important climate actions that we all have access to is imagination and curiosity and dreaming. And so I really wanted to land here for the final conversation in this installment of why collective imagination is so important for creating a different climate story. Hope you enjoy. Hi, everyone. This is Rachel, and we have come to our last installment of this podcast series. And today is a really exciting conversation. I am joined by Olivia and Laurel and Natalie and Bonita, and we are going to be in practice together of collective visioning and imagining the climate future that we want to live in the present and in the future. And this conversation is based on a lot that I've been thinking through, because I find that in climate and environmental spaces, we spend a lot of time, giving attention to energy of all that is wrong, right? Of all that is harmful and violent and destructive. And it's so important to recognize and honor those realities. And also, I think it's equally important to give space and time to talk about and dream up what we want in this world, right? Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson has this new book that says, right, what if we get it right? And I think it's really important to give breath to those possibilities as well. And, I remember when I was an undergrad, I had an environmental justice course. And one of the assignments that we were given was imagining what kind of worlds we wanted to live in, and imagining what kind of systems would exist, and imagining how we would feel in this world. And at that time, I was like, oh, this doesn't feel like academic and this feels like a waste of time. I was in a very different mind space back then. And now I'm realizing actually how deeply important that assignment was. Maybe it was actually the most important assignment that I had. And so today we're just going to practice sharing our thoughts and dreams for the future. And just to ground us, I want to begin by asking all of us to name what climate emotions are present for us in this moment. And also to acknowledge that our climate emotions may be different tomorrow, they may be different this afternoon, right? They're complex and they're changing. And so in this moment, I will say I'm feeling deep worry, I'm feeling rage, but I'm also feeling creativity, I'm feeling courageous, and I'm feeling a kind of uncertainty that's almost calming in a way. So I'm going to ask now, Olivia, if you would like to share what climate emotions are present for you.
I, I am, my name is Olivia and my pronouns are she, her. And I yesterday went to a public lands protest. It was like this little rally, and it was in the park that I grew up going to play and like go to the swimming pool. And I brought my dogs, and it was the first time I ever brought my dogs to a protest, and it was really, really sweet. But I'm feeling a lot of grief for, and a lot of fear for what our summer is going to look like now that we have so many less firefighters for our forests. And I'm just really, really worried about how we're going to navigate that. And I'm feeling betrayed. I'm feeling very betrayed by our system, and I am, I don't know, I'm clinging to hope, but. And then I'm gonna pass it to Natalie.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalie and I use she, her pronouns. And currently I'm feeling grateful and very tranquil, as well as a rush of energy and kind of like momentum. And I'll pass it to Laurel.
Hi, I'm Laurel. I use she, her pronouns, and I think coming off of a trip to Catalina Island and like hearing my friend who loves to go diving in the kelp forests, and I guess she was sharing with me that like her professors were saying that like they should all go see the kelp forest now because it may be gone in their lifetime. And so that like has sent me into like kind of like a worry state about like what else will be lost in our lifetimes. But I think also learning about like the conservation efforts that have been going on, that gives me a little bit of hope as well. And I will pass it to Bonita.
Thanks, Laurel. So today I am feeling kind of a mix of feelings. I think I started out when I went out this morning for my walk, just feeling some heaviness, some sadness in my heart, feeling a bit discouraged about the the state of the world, the political systems that we live within. Um, and Also, I'm appreciating the sunshine today and hearing the birds this morning and just feeling the start of spring in the air. And I'm just feeling grateful, feeling grateful and continuing to have this little seedling of hope in my heart for what is possible in my community, in our communities, and yeah, so just nurturing that little spark. Yeah,
Yeah.
so just grateful and a bit inspired by people, actually, by real people, not people on the news, people that I interact with, which includes all of you.
Hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I'm feeling the same way being here with everyone. I just want to take one collective deep breath. I'm going to ask the listeners to do the same, just to hold all our feelings, to hold all that is and all that can still be, acknowledging that there's a lot of loss and there'll be a lot of continued loss, but also to give space to uncertainty, to give space to all that can still bloom and be built and be mended and become new and beautiful. So, okay. Breathing deeply, something I don't think we do enough. Um, I want to, something I was thinking about and hearing everyone share too is how it's so vital, I think, to give voice to our climate emotions, um, and also the way that emotions can be used as this vital force, and generator to change the climate in the way that we want. I think of energy or emotions as energy in motion, right? So what kind of energies do we want to bring to move and change things? So just thinking on that, leaning into this energy of what can we create together. I'm going to ask us all to be with the question of what do we want our present to look like? What do we want our climate futures to look like? What does that mean to all of you? Maybe what does that look like at a systems level for you? What does that feel like? What does maybe your life, look like? I think, again, it's so important to practice this space of radical imagination. And it's this practice, I believe that Tori Choi says this, that it's about forging realities rather than escaping them. And really leaning into this imagination and creation. And, how can we create the conditions of our blooming to be loving stewards of the future and healers of the past? What do we want to move towards? I think I can start, and we can, we'll see who speak next if something's sparked. But what's coming to mind in this moment, this is a very small list, but I want to live in a world where teachers are more valued. Number one, I come from two art teacher parents. Teachers to be valued. I'm also moving into becoming a teacher. I want a world filled with care and intentionality and the honoring of the humanity of everyone, every non-human being. I want systems that allow for more intergenerational connection between young and old and everyone in between, because I all think each age, each generation has something really vital to offer each other. And I really want more communal living. I've been talking with my partner about what we want our life to look like down the road, and I really want to. Our dream is to kind of live on a cul-de-sac with our friends, living next to the people we love, and kind of creating this ecosystem together. Um, and so those are just some things that are present.
Oh,
And I'll invite, yeah,
I was gonna say,
Natalie, to go for
um,
it.
I totally agree with that, like envisioning of the world. And I think for me also, everyone would just have the individual understanding that the environment is something that needs to be protected and cared for. Um, and just everyone is kind of learned within school, so like teachers as well. Um, or I don't know, was just like born with the mentality of trying to take care of what is around us, even if people didn't grow up in nature. Um, in addition to that, like grow up learning it both in urban and non-urban areas, just kind of it's in our ingrained school system, would be learning about the environment, because I think if you learn about it, you're more likely to care about it, and if you know the beauties of it potentially. um, and then also a kind of corporate and political world where we also hold those values and really understand that businesses and corporations um, and large companies can hold both, where they can both care for the environment but also, do whatever their mission is within the company. So on many different levels as a society, we are kind of putting um, the environment and earth and just nature kind of in the back pocket of all of our decisions, and that would just be something that's ingrained into us, where we don't even have to think about thinking twice or like having a person be labeled as an activist. We kind of just are all the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that.
A
Who would
couple
like to share?
months ago, I had this vision. I was listening to these people talk about the renewable energy transition and how we can do it. And then we were talking about coal and all of the families whose entire livelihoods have been dependent upon this form and this industry for so long, and how like that transition is so tricky. And this woman, she comes from a coal family, and her entire life is now dedicated to helping, like meeting coal workers where they are and helping them understand how we can navigate to renewable energies, but like not doing it in a demeaning way, and just like really, really, really working with them to make it seem like this not scary thing. And then in learning about and hearing her talk, I had this vision where the future that I want our future generations to not even imagine what a world with coal is like. I want them to think it's ridiculous that we ever used coal. And I want them to think about the way that we used fossil fuel energies as like this weird thing that like happened for a couple hundred years, and then we figured it out and we moved to renewable energies. And then we live in this because the planet gives us energy. And just having injustice feel living in such a just society that injustice, like, they can't even wrap their minds around what that is. And that's like my radical utopia. And I think that in some ways utopia is possible, and I think that in radical imagination we have to think about what a utopia would be like. We have to create this amazing perfect world, and then we can find avenues to navigate it. And I think that this woman, and I feel so bad that I'm forgetting her name. I wish that I could remember it. I feel like she is navigating utopia because she's creating this new avenue of people who have been so anti-renewable energy because their entire livelihoods depend on coal. And so I don't ever want to like have people's livelihoods destroyed, but I want people to know that your future is dependent upon a planet, and fossil fuels are not going to let us have a habitable environment. And so that's my like radical dream, is that we actually can completely transition to renewable energies in a safe manner, that people feel safe and they don't feel disrupted and dysregulated, and that we can create a society that does that.
Yeah, thank you. If I can just share like the thoughts I'm having. I really appreciate what you said about how we need to like unnormalize the absurd. Like we've normalized such absurd things in this world. So yes to that. And I think too, right, like everyone just wants to feel safe and loved. It's like at the end of the day, I think we can find commonality in this wish just to feel safe and loved. And I think, it sounds like what this woman is doing is, and we can, if you find the name, I'll put it in the show notes later on, but is making sure that these people know that we still value a life for them in which they feel safe and loved and supported. And I think that's so important to be able to shift people's minds and hearts, right? And it's an important reminder that the work of climate change is the work of culture shifting. It's the work of imagination shifting, and shifting the stories that we hold as true. So for these coal workers, perhaps that story is like coal is the only thing in my life that I have in order to have a life that is safe and where I can find love. And so how do we shift these external and internal structures? So thank you for sharing that.
I can go next. Something that both Natalie and Olivia said kind of reminded me of a conversation I had with my coworkers. And I work in film and TV, but putting climate-friendly behaviors on screen. So things like eating plant-based, driving an electric vehicle, solar panels, reducing food waste. And we were talking about how, like, in an ideal world, our jobs wouldn't exist because these things would just be implemented by the writers themselves. So it's kind of like what Natalie said about like a world where people aren't climate activists, like everyone, like it's not like a weird thing to be, it's like everyone just has this care for the planet ingrained in them. And so yeah, I would love that, where like every job is kind of a climate job and everyone is like doing their part, instead of it being like, oh, these people are working on climate. And then another thing on that thread is like, like smoking used to be super common in film and TV shows, and now you hardly see that, and like when you do see it, it's kind of like you kind of cringe, or like I do, and it's like, oh, they're smoking tobacco. And so like I would love if that was like the reaction people had when they saw like diesel cars, things like that. And so yeah, that would be cool. And then I was thinking about this question just on like a personal level, and I'm like, I would love to have kids one day, and like for them to be able to just like play outside without being worried about like air pollution or wildfire smoke, and like for them to be able to go to places that I visited as a child. And kind of on Rachel, how you said like you would want teachers to be valued, I would love for scientists and outdoor jobs, things like national park employees to be valued more, so that nature would be better protected.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bonita, what's present for you right now?
I'm chewing on different parts of this conversation and really appreciating this. And the one piece that jumps out at me right now, I'm thinking about via how you mentioned like that utopia is possible, that we can kind of imagine that and then navigate towards it. And it's interesting because like for me, in so many ways, I'm such a heartfelt and emotional person. And like in so many ways, I kind of, especially in the climate space, I can really, my journey is led so much by my own emotional struggles. And and at the same time, what I've found in myself that there is this, I think what gets in my way sometimes is this part of me that says, no, but no, but that's not possible. Or no, but like
Mhm.
all the steps that get between us and utopia. And because I remember when I was doing my master's in Northern California about it was like, oh my God, it was a couple decades ago. That's scary. Um, when I was so in that period of my life, I was learning about eco villages and just imagining how amazing it would be to live on an eco village and be surrounded by like-minded, like-hearted people, and just to really kind of rewrite our cultural story and the ways that we functioned in the world, the way that we tended the land and interacted with the landscape. And it was it at that time, and maybe it was also part of the, living in Northern California, it just seemed to me at the time, it seemed more reachable as a dream. It seemed like only a few steps away. And then I moved back to, by choice, I moved back to what we call Ontario, Canada. And it's more conservative here. And over the years, that kind of the steps towards utopia in some way started feeling farther away to me. And what I realized for me that what's really become my practice in this last 10 years has been about practicing that sense of radical love, radical care, radical connectedness here and now every day. And so I can kind of just bypass that part of me that says, but those 10 or 20 steps between here and my imagined future reality aren't possible for all of these reasons, but this is possible right now. And so the relationships that I cultivate now, the way I talk with strangers when I pass them on the street, the way I talk to and have relationships and connect and relate to people at the coffee shop, at the grocery store, at the community garden, the way we grow our food now, the way we interact and connect with and support farmers now, for me, even though these are all small things. They help me know and just to have an experience of a feeling, this feeling of hopefulness, a sense of possibility, a sense of community, a sense of safety through because of these relationships. And so for me, it's maybe not as big as a big utopian future that maybe I would have imagined a couple of decades ago. And it helps me a lot having this in my day to day, week to week life, like really being able to hold these things in a tangible way and really know that, oh, in the ice storm, in the floods that we had a couple of years ago, we were able to get help from neighbors. We were checking on neighbors. We were knocking on doors. People were knocking on our doors. And that is what we have been building and cultivating. And so for me, it is kind of this mix of like a past, present, and a future
Mm.
co-creation, rewriting. Um, I think it's, yeah, so I think it's harder for me to imagine like a radically different future without practicing all of those small ways of caring and stretching outside of the boxes that we've learned to live within. Um, and so that's how I want to live my life, and that's how I try to live my life on a day-to-day basis, is really
Mhm.
trying to live as if my my neighbors and as if the people that I pass in the street who are walking their dogs are the people that I will find in my eco village. And I guess that's kind of what I kind of like, what if I guess at some point I kind of imagined being able to transport myself into another place that would be this miraculous eco village. And now it's like, oh, actually, this is exactly where I want to be. And the people around me may or may not share some of or many of my values, and yet we we do value respect. We do value mutual support. We do value kindness towards one another. And so it's become actually more important to me to slowly transform this place into the the culture that I am hoping for.
Mhm. Yeah. It's an important reminder too that this is accompanied by practice, right? And it reminds me a lot. I heard this conversation recently by with Adrienne Marie Brown on her new book Loving Corrections, and she said it's not just every 4 year election everything changes and that's all we hold on to. We have to live and love into our values every day. And Bonita, what you just said really, I think, encapsulates that of living and loving into our values every day with the people around us in our here and now, right? I really appreciate that. If we all imagine, okay, so just based on what everyone shared, um, let's just sit with that for a second and imagine what climate emotions are present in that world, right? What does that world feel like? Olivia.
Gosh. Ah,
No worries, you're okay.
Little thing, and it would.
We can't hear you. That's okay. I'm gonna go to Laurel and then we'll come back.
I would say gratitude for, like, yeah, if I'm imagining being in that place, I would just feel gratitude for the community in.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got it.
Okay. Yay. You're,
I would feel so much hope and empathy, and I don't know, this is not an emotion, but it's green. Like everything is green. It
mm,
feels green, the air smells clean, and you can just like, I don't know, like it's that feeling when you're like glowing with like love and joy, and like it's just like the most, like I feel like it would feel like the feeling of when it's like early spring and it's this night, like it's just the sun is setting and it's closer to 8, and you just feel warm and the birds are like chirping and you just feel like there's the whole world ahead of you. Your whole life is ahead of you. That's how uh, this like world would feel. And I think that that's what we don't feel right now. Is we don't feel like the whole world is ahead of us. We feel like the world is slipping through our fingers. And so if we can capture that moment of like this pure hope and joy and just contentment, like you just feel like life is right. That's
hmm.
how it would feel.
Mm, yeah. To me, that's the feeling. I know you're an artist. To me, that's the feeling I have when I'm creating art. Like it's just, yeah, there's something that just feels so right about it. And I feel so connected to like myself and the world around me and spirit, and it's just that same like my chest even like feels more open. Like it feels, things just feel more like possible.
For me, for me, it would similar to what Olivia just said, but the moment of just like pure joy when you're doing something, and like the other day I was at the sunset at the beach, I was like, nothing could be better than this type of feeling. I would just want for everyone in the world to like go about their day with like, oh my god, this is just the most joyful thing, like with the biggest smile. That's the emotion.
Mm.
For me, it was about when I really immerse myself into that that radically love-filled present and future. I feel so much love. And when I compare that to the present day life that I typically live, it is still grounded and rooted in love. And depending on the day, depending on what I might be struggling with, or what maybe what I've read in the news, or what I'm focused on in our community, sometimes that love is kind of more like a glimmer or a tiny seed. Like it's always there, and I know that that's really what motivates me and drives me forward. And when I imagine this world being the world that I deeply want to live in, it's just it's the love isn't this tiny baby seedling, it's this huge tree. It just takes up the whole space. And I love, Olivia, I loved just thinking about your kind of the metaphor of spring, because I'm really feeling that spring energy here this week, and just noticing it's getting a little bit warmer, the snow is starting to melt, the birds are starting to sing. And I think what it is that, when in this last several years, when I think about the climate crisis, and just in my work engaging in community around the climate, it's kind of it's like this winter time. And so the seeds are still there, and the plants are in the ground and they're still rooted and the trees are still there. And there's like this dormancy, which is, and it's a natural part of the life cycle. It's a natural part of
Mhm.
the cycle of the seasons, especially here in the area where I live. And it's, I think for me, in that wintertime energy, it's about kind of continuing to just like really surrender and go deep into those roots of like, I don't, see that greenery. There isn't that growth and that lushness and that kind of bursting out full of potential. And so it's really about like going deep within to connect with the root of what is possible. And I love just this when I connect with the vision, it is, I love the springtime energy. It's just like, oh right. Yeah, all of this is waking up. The roots are waking up. The seedlings are starting to germinate. The perennials that are out there are starting to poke up out of the ground and starting to reach up, and I love love that metaphor and that reminder and just that feeling in my heart and in my body when I imagine that, and when I look outside the window too.
Yeah, I have these plants on the windowsill in my kitchen, and every morning I find myself being surprised, being like, you're still growing. Like, despite everything, like, you're still, there's still new sprouts. Like, you're still reaching towards the sunlight. And that's so encouraging. Um, yeah, I had this little first grader I taught, and she wrote this little poem. I don't remember all of it, but one of the lines she said was something along the lines of like, "We live in Love Sea." And I'm like, I want to live in Love Sea. That's what I want, is to see love. Um, I think, yeah, it just reminds me too, like when we're little, I think we're encouraged to practice imagining and dreaming far more than we are as adults, and that it's such an important muscle to exercise and a practice to create of like, how do we want to live into these values on a daily basis. And I think there's, certain things that for me feel like a radical imagination practice, creating art, journaling, even talking to my friends. Um, I'm wondering what else. I know Bonita, you shared some practices, but what else to others feels like kind of a radical imagination practice that you have in your everyday life, or one that can be tended to, or maybe something that you'd like to start in your own life.
For me, it is going and spending time with nature, and just like imbuing it in my day in whatever way I can. And I'm really lucky to live in a place where I have access to a lot of nature because I'm from Montana. And like I have the most beautiful trails literally like 15 minutes away from my house. But some days I can't even do that, and I just go on a little walk, and this is silly, but I hug a tree. I grew up hugging trees like at my preschool, and it is a practice that I think is really, really helpful, and it Um, it just makes me feel more in tune. And then also, like, inviting my friends to spend time in nature. Like, instead of going to a coffee shop, I say, like, why don't we go for a walk? And sit by the river and make some art. And we're getting to that season. I'm so excited to, like, finally start going outside with my friends. I've already been on a couple river walks. And so just, like, having my friend make time with my friends to spend in nature is, I think, one of the ways that you can really just imbue it in every single day, because you can go on a walk with a friend any day. And I think that also helps with building community, because we have these expectations of, like, having friends, like adult friendships, like with you, like only need to spend time with them, and you need to do this like big fancy thing. And it's like, no, we can hang out with each other just like casually. We can see each other for an hour, say hi, I love you, catch up a little bit, and then go about our days. Like, we can just, like, making that extra time for yourself and for your friends and the people you love is just so important. And so just, like, imbuing those little days, like those little things in your casual everydays, instead of making them be like this big thing. Um, yeah, that's my little way.
Yeah.
I love that you said that, because that's like building community is something I'm trying to do more, and like building it where like we have casual hangs, and like I am hosting a few friends tomorrow where I'm just gonna cook dinner for them, and then we're gonna parallel play. Like, we're all just bringing our own work to do, or like making art or whatever, and we're just gonna like hang out together, but be in the same like space. Um, and then like the other week, I just went over to my friends to like watch hummingbirds from his hummingbird feeder. So like I'm like, I love these just like chill, like no pressure. Like, we don't have to go to a restaurant or like do something big. Like, and it just feels so much more homey when it's like a home cooked meal and like we're sitting on the couch together. I don't know. I love that kind of thing, and so I'm trying to do more of that.
I totally agree with like bringing hanging out outside. I think I live downtown, so there's not that much greenery, but something that I want to do more is go to the beach with my friends. Um, I just went. I think like the beach sunsets here are like some of the most calming things ever, and I really really want to take advantage of living here in LA and doing that more. And then if I can't do that, something that I can do every day is just open my window to get fresh air. I feel like I never open my window. Um, and I feel like that would be a good reminder just to feel like real air, and like the breeze will help me like be grounded and just be more intact with the earth.
Yeah.
I'm loving all of these so much.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking about how when I was little, so I grew up in the suburbs of Toronto, and there wasn't there weren't many wild or places that I thought of as wild spaces there. And so I would talk to the tree outside my window. And now where I live, there's a young woods that, maybe it's about less than 10 minutes walk from where I am. And I love going to the woods, going to the river, and talking to the trees and singing to the trees and singing to the water and singing to the animals that are there. And that just really fills me and nourishes me so much. And it's just kind of interesting that I kind of wish that I had been encouraged to do that as a child. That oh, it's actually like it feels great to talk to and hug trees and sing to animals and birds, and oh, I actually could be doing this a lot more, and this feels great. And I love the idea so much, Laurel, of just gathering friends and inviting them to parallel play together. I love that idea so much. I think I'm going to do that too.
Mhm.
And I think what I've something really super simple that I started doing last year with friends was like such a low lift. I just invited some people over and said, okay, if you want to, I invite you to come join me for a meditation. We're going to meditate for half an hour. and then just have tea afterwards. So I like not even worrying about having, because I love potlucks, and then afterwards it's like, oh, so many dishes and clean up, and so I love the idea of just really gathering with people that I care about and also having it be super duper easy. And yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Plant friends and human friends. Easy
Yep.
ways of doing that. I love that so much.
Hmm. What I heard in all of that is to kind of set aside this idea of grand expectation and perfection, and to invite more ease and messiness, like it's okay to be in the messy middle of things and still be in community and still invite someone over. I really, yeah, I really appreciate all these. I am really, something really present for me is how to live more in community. It's something I've been thinking through a lot. And I invite the listeners to also be thinking through kind of what that means and how we can just, yeah, live more with each other, and be present to those around us. And I think a lot about this question that I read in Tori Choi's book on You're Not Alone Navigating Eco Anxiety, I believe is the name. And it says, who do you spend time with? Who do you break bread with? Who do you challenge systems with? Who do you go to in times of need? And I think it's really important questions to be thinking on, for a radical imagination practice, and in order to forge the climate realities that we want. And so, yeah, I just think it's important questions that I know I don't sit with enough, because those answers they don't come immediately to me. So I'm going to be sitting with those questions. I want to ask if there's anything that else that anyone would like to share. I think there's been so many beautiful offerings in this conversation, and obviously this is a continuing conversation, and I would invite the listeners, to incorporate more dreaming and imagination into your lives, in whatever way that feels right to you. Um, yeah, does anyone have anything else they would like to leave the listeners with?
Rachel, there's something that came to me when you were
Yeah.
speaking. You said being in the messy middle, and that really jumped out at me. And it just makes me think about how how messy things are in the world right now, and probably how much messier things will be, and that we don't have to derive our sense of hope or possibility from things being neat or clean or clear, that we actually can, because this is the reality that we're inhabiting right now, that we can still make the most of being in this messy middle, and we can still create hopeful possibilities. We can still engage in strengthening our communities and our relationships in this messy middle. That just because it's a messy middle, it doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean dot, 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 and therefore that actually the messy middle is still a place of possibility and opportunity, and we we are invited to engage in that space.
Yeah, I think it's a really generative space, actually, and can offer us a lot of ways to imagine. So, yeah, I would invite everyone to lean into that space. I've been really influenced by the thinker Bayo Akomamafe around that. I know Elisa and I talk a lot about that in our conversation. Um, and yeah, and just how much can come from actually being in the wound of it all. And how, yeah, healing can really come from that place of not trying to put a band-aid on it, but really going deeply into that place. Um, so yeah, I think that's a way to kind of see the what is and also the what if, and to, you know, balance those two. And I'll leave everyone with this quote by Anika Hanstein Izora, who's an artist and writer, and head of design at Somewhere Good, which is a social startup that reimagines the internet. And they say, I want to think about how dreaming can sway away from toxic positivity, escapism, or reductionism. When I think about dreaming, I think about how it can be used as a strategy, as a way to critique, as a balm, as a method of envisioning beyond the status quo, which is informed by those in power. And she suggests communal dreaming as practice can look like reading and studying together, growing community gardens, creating space for rest and time for wonder, pleasure, and play, building creative ecosystems, and creating and sharing art with and among one another. So we'll end there. And I want to just thank you all so much for being in this conversation and for leaning and loving into your values in the everyday. And to our listeners, thank you so much. We hope that, you take something away from this offering. And here's to the climate present and futures we want to see in the world.